In this update, we've got a lot of moving parts in the weather department between now and the first week of February. So we're going to break down those details ahead. First, we've got a colder pocket of air that's really been building across areas of Quebec, if not Arctic air, and that is going to be swinging southbound over the next couple of days across areas of New England. That's actually going to bring some snow showers and some snow squalls along with it between now and Thursday. We also have a secondary piece of energy. This is an upper level low that has developed in southern portions of California, left them some beneficial rains, but now that's going to be on the move, setting up a surface low down there in Texas. That's going to set up several days of some heavier rains, especially Wednesday and Thursday. And that's going to set up a fairly large storm system with a good pocket of energy that's going to be moving across from west to east, bringing some severe storms and definitely some heavier rainfall along with it. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in to get all my daily content on my channel to keep you well ahead of the storm. So here it is on the 500 millibar. You can actually see that colder pocket of air really building up there in Quebec. That is the piece of energy that's going to be diving southbound. It's well below zero. In fact, it's going to go 20, if not some areas 30 below zero, frigid air. Some of that air mass is going to be negative numbers up here across Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And then it will bring some snow squalls along with it as well through the Great Lakes, especially those areas into New England, down into portions of the Northeast. And there's that second piece of energy that's getting its act together across the West Coast. You've got warmer anomalies building across the Northwest, drier anomalies, and there's the south wind, the southwest wind that's pulling in more moisture, bringing in some of those warmer anomalies back in the picture. That's what's going to cause the air to rise and produce widespread showers and thunderstorms, likely as we get into the day on Wednesday. So as we move through, here is your system up across the Great Lakes into the Northeast. I think it gets its act together tonight and heads through all the way into tomorrow. So we should see that Arctic front pushing southbound, and this will set up some fairly significant snow squalls along its wake, especially for areas across upstate New York, getting into the northern portions of Pennsylvania, as well as into Vermont and New Hampshire, back into Massachusetts, pieces of Connecticut. So you should see some snow squalls within between setting up for tonight and going through the all day tomorrow and ending sometime on tomorrow night as that moves through. And then of course you've got that Arctic air that will come in on the backside, setting up those very cold frigid like conditions. And some areas will be going below zero up there across New England, but further off to the south, there's that piece of energy with that upper level low that will spread off and separate and form a cutoff low. And it's going to be taking its sweet time as it's moving across from west to east. So it should bring at least some beneficial showers for those areas across the Four Corners regions. But by the time it hits Texas, it's going to tap into a little bit more instability. Those higher dew points you're going to be working with. So we're not looking at fairly significant of severe weather threat, but we are looking at some gustier winds. And this could set up a fairly decent, nasty squall line into the overnight hours. This is your wee hour of the morning event with a lot of lightning associated with this and some higher wind gusts that could approach minimal severe weather criteria. But some of those heavier rains would likely spread into Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas and portions of Missouri. But as we head into Thursday, I think all that shifts out of Dallas and goes into in East Texas, Southeast Texas. And as we headed into Thursday afternoon and more of the heat of the atmosphere down there in Southeast Texas, some of those could likely turn severe, producing some larger hail with it, as well as some damaging winds. The heavier rains move into Louisiana, but especially there in Arkansas, we could be looking at multiple inches of rain across Dallas, Northeast Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas, especially a little bit lighter amounts as you swing further off to the east in Mississippi and Alabama, heading into Tennessee, back into Kentucky, and even lighter amounts as you swing further north across Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and back into Iowa on Thursday. But it does have a lot of moisture content. That's why we're looking at least widespread 1 to 3 inches. I mean, this is the time of year. This is one of your drier months down down here. So whenever you're seeing some precipitation anomalies around 300%, you're definitely looking at a multi-inch rain event, and that's likely going to unfold, especially in the overnight hours on Wednesday night headed into Thursday. And as we move deeper into the Thursday, that's going to be likely shifting into Louisiana, back into Arkansas. But these areas will set up the bullseye, if you will. Some isolated areas likely getting some 4 to possibly 5 inch totals. And we do have some snow on the backside, the colder side of the system, that will fly in areas of New Mexico, back into, as well as into Colorado. And that will continue to shift eastbound as we head into Friday. So now we're talking likely not severe by then, but still a squall line that will be moving across from west to east, portions of Alabama back into Georgia. This will get into eastern areas of Tennessee by then, getting into western areas of Virginia, back into the Carolinas, swing up into West Virginia. But there's also going to be a sharp gradient where there's going to be that Arctic air pulling down southbound as we got the warmer winds, warmer air pulling in from the south. So we should set up a kind of a thin little area where we could see some snow, that transition to snow that could likely set up somewhere in the Chicago vicinity on the northern border, maybe move through Cleveland, those areas, back through upstate New York, getting into that thin squall line heading into Friday, possibly Saturday time frame. And you can definitely see it there on Friday night heading into Saturday morning. There is that thin squall line that we kind of talked about. There's your freezing line, right? So there's going to be a, rain to the south and a quick transition to a kind of a wet snow up here across this region as this kind of moves out. And notice the Pacific Northwest, you have been dry, but that's going to be changing big time because the rains do come back with a vengeance. And once they start, it doesn't look to stop anytime soon. So you're like, where's my stuff? Where no one's talking about Washington and Oregon. Yeah, we'll be talking about you guys because you like basically get inundated every single day with heavier rains, and the snows come back for the higher terrain going into, especially as we flip the calendar in February. But between now and the end of the month, this is where we stand. So this is your rain amounts with the system. So right now we've got that little cutoff low setting up shop across the Four Corners regions. Some of this will likely be in the form of snow, especially in the high elevations. But this, once it gets down to Texas, some of these could turn severe, likely south of Dallas, maybe in the Austin region towards Waco. And then on Thursday, more likely into southeast Texas, getting into Louisiana. But there's your bullseye, your 2 to 3, 4 inch swath from North Texas to northeastern Texas to southeastern Oklahoma and to Arkansas, Missouri. They're into western areas of Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as northern areas of Mississippi. That's more your favorite areas would likely get the multi-inch rains. You go a little bit south of that, a little bit north of that, still getting some rains, but likely less than an inch. Further north you go into Ohio, back into Pennsylvania, getting into upstate New York, and it'll be even lighter amounts as you swing further off to the east, getting into the southeastern regions and into the Carolinas with about a half-inch rains. But there's the rains coming back for the picture for the Pacific Northwest. I don't think that actually starts until Friday of this upcoming week. But here's your snow. So first we've got the snow squalls that will be coming through. Some of these would lay about 1 to 3 inches of snow. Some of these areas could likely overperform if it sits in an area long enough. So don't be surprised if you have some isolated 5-7 inch totals out of this deal. But there's the sharp gradient to where some of the snow could unfold, and it's going to be likely a thin little squall line that will be moving across. So you have the Arctic air pulling southbound, you got the warmer winds coming from the north, and then the battle zones there in the middle, and that could set up a surprise little snow up across this region. Would likely be in the vicinity of central, say, Des Moines region, back into Chicago, into Cleveland, those areas, possibly in Detroit. I mean, right, it's a thin squall line, right? So you do have some snow showers across the Four Corners regions, but after that, it's a complete transformation, right? We've been very cold, and you can definitely see the warmer anomalies start to build further south. So once we hit the end of the month, Friday coming up on the 31st, most of the lower 48 is above average, and that's a far cry of considering what we've been. We've had a pretty cold January, right? So it rebounds rather quickly as we head into Friday. And then, you know, where's the cold air, right? So where's it at? It's like, well, it's north. If it's not in the lower 48, it's got to be north. And it's exactly where it's at. That's in Alaska, where they've been, you know, all these pictures saying, hey, you know, Alaska's warmer than New Orleans, right? Which it was. That's not going to be the case once we, you know, warm up in the lower 48. That cold air has got to go somewhere, and it goes straight north and it's go back up into Alaska, and it turns brutally cold as we head into that Friday time frame. And these are actual temperatures, folks. Yes, we're talking 30, 40, some places could approach almost 50 below zero, and feels like it's even colder than that. So it definitely turns brutal cold up there into Alaska as we end the month. But how long is that colder air going to be able to last, right? So if it's there, you know it can't last forever. And then we start to see signs if it's going to come back or not. So as we flip the calendar to February, this is what we look like. We're going to more of a zonal flow to start the month with those warmer anomalies across a good part of the lower 48. Zonal flow is basically a flow that's coming off the Pacific, and you got the cold pocket of air building south. But look what happens, right? We start to see the ridge start to build back. So that cold, at least the extensive cold, likely not going to last for an extended period of time, as we got more ridging starting to build up there Alaska, and that's going to press the trough underneath and start diving it southbound. So by the time we get to Tuesday of next week and heading into your February the 4th time frame, we're already seeing some of that Arctic air mass coming back in the picture for British Columbia. We get in the negative teens, some 20 below zeros. We get down to 10 below zero there in Montana. We got negative numbers coming back for the Dakotas and single digits for many, you know, Minnesota. We've got freezing temperatures back in the picture across the Ohio Valley. So it does have some of that colder air and the battle zone setting up further south. These are low temperatures, right? So 40s, 50s, and 60s for low temperatures, and we've got single digits and below zero up there into the northwest. But we also have a lot of precipitation because we got the south wind. South wind pulls in that warm, you know, warmer moisture off the Gulf, and then we also have activity across the west coast. So it's going to be setting up a pretty rainy, a pretty wet week across a good part of the west, much of the central, and much of the east. Now, how much is that going to be rain, and how much is that going to be snow? So we know the cold air is coming from the north, right? And as it keeps pressing that trough further south, across the border from Canada into the United States, it's going to set up a boundary, right? We've got a pretty snowy event coming up. You know, once we get into the 4th and 5th and 6th time frame, most of this could be transferring to snow across the good parts of the northern interiors, back to the Dakotas, into Minnesota, back into Iowa again, those areas across Wisconsin. And with that trough coming in off the west, it's going to be another windy setup once we get past the 4th time frame, especially for those areas out west. So unfortunately, that does include the Santa Ana winds coming back in the picture. So that's definitely not a good sign, but it definitely appears to start getting active again once we get past Groundhog Day, and that sets up more snow across the northern regions. We likely have that snow with the most ensembles having that picture with that trough coming back down, and that could set up some more snow showers across areas of Montana back through Wyoming, getting into Colorado, through the Dakotas into Minnesota, back into Wisconsin. And the cold air is going to continue to press. So I don't think it lasts very long until Alaska still gets cold, but not brutally cold. And it starts to filter down into the lower 48, especially the deeper we get into that first week of February. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch my next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.